At New Year's Eve dinner, Mom clinked her champagne glass and smiled that practiced smile she saved for when she wanted everyone's attention on Blair. Blair's engagement party was absolutely stunning, she announced to the table. So, Jordan, when are you finally going to settle down? The laughter that followed felt like tiny knives. I set down my fork, the metal clinking against fine china louder than it should have been. I already did, I said, 8 months ago. You all got invitations. The room went so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, each second stretching out like an accusation. Then Dad's voice, barely audible, saying, "We never received any invitations." I reached into my purse. That's when everything they'd been hiding finally came crashing down. Growing up in our house meant learning early that some people were born to shine while others were born to make space. Blair was the sun, and I was supposed to orbit quietly, gratefully, without blocking any light. I wasn't angry about it as a kid. I thought that's just how families worked. One daughter got the attention, the other got the leftovers. By the time we hit high school, the pattern had calcified into something permanent. Mom managed Blair's life like she was curating a museum exhibit. Volleyball tournaments, debate team championships, homecoming court, a bedroom wall covered in medals and sashes. When I won the regional science competition in 10th grade, Mom congratulated me over her shoulder while adjusting Blair's prom dress in the hallway mirror. She said we'd celebrate later, but later never came. I learned to adapt. I got good at being invisible, at anticipating what they needed before they asked, at surviving in the margins. Portland changed everything, though. Moving 4 hours north for my job wasn't an act of rebellion, it was self-preservation. I built a life there that actually felt like mine. A small apartment near the river, large windows that let in gray morning light, stacks of urban planning reports covering my dining table. My work analyzing city infrastructure and housing policy didn't impress the people Mom wanted to impress, but it mattered. It made sense. And then there was Caleb. He saw me in ways my family never even attempted. He listened when I talked about work. He remembered details. He asked follow-up questions days later about things I'd mentioned in passing. His parents, Greg and Diane, noticed me too, not because I performed for them or earned their attention, but because they genuinely cared. The first time Diane hugged me, she held on for several seconds, her hand rubbing my back in small circles. She asked about my latest project, remembered the neighborhood name, wanted to know if the city council approved the rezoning plan. Greg did too. They weren't perfect people, but they were present. That was new. So when Caleb proposed on a rainy April morning at our favorite coffee shop, the one with the chipped mugs and the owner who knew our order, I said yes without hesitation. We didn't want anything elaborate. We chose a small venue by the Columbia River, invited the people who actually knew us, kept everything intimate and real. The only thing I hoped for, quietly and against my better judgment, was that my parents and Blair would show up, that maybe, just this once, they'd choose me. I designed the invitations myself, cream cardstock with sage green lettering, simple and elegant. I had them printed at a local shop on Hawthorne, picked them up on a Tuesday afternoon, and mailed them with signature confirmation because I knew my family's habit of losing things that didn't serve them. I triple-checked the addresses. I refreshed the tracking page obsessively, watching each package move through the system like I was monitoring a heartbeat. When all 4 showed delivered with signatures, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Then came the silence. No phone calls, no texts, not even a casual congratulations in the family group chat that had existed since my freshman year of college. Days turned into weeks. The wedding came and went on June 14th, a Saturday that smelled like roses and river water, with 73 people who loved us enough to show up. My family wasn't among them. I told myself stories to avoid the truth. Maybe the mail got mixed up. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe they'd call any day now, apologetic and embarrassed. But underneath those stories, a colder truth was taking root. Someone made sure those invitations disappeared, and I didn't know how right I was until New Year's Eve. The silence after the wedding didn't just sit there, it grew, spreading into every corner of my life like mold behind a wall. At first, I waited. People get busy, I reasoned. They'll reach out eventually. But days became weeks, and the quiet turned deliberate. I tried calling Mom 3 times, voicemail every time. I texted Dad a photo of the wedding, just Caleb and me by the river, the city skyline blurred in the background. He replied 6 hours later, "Beautiful. We'll talk soon." We never talked. The family group chat, the one where Mom shared Blair's every achievement and Dad posted bad jokes, suddenly didn't show my name anymore. I wasn't removed dramatically. I was erased, quietly, efficiently, like I'd never been there at all. I mentioned it to Caleb one night while folding laundry, trying to sound casual. "Maybe it's a glitch," I said, though my voice betrayed me. He set down the shirt he was folding and looked at me directly. "Jordan, did they respond to the invitations at all?" I shook my head. He didn't push, he just said, "Let's check the delivery logs." He helped me navigate the Postal Service website, something I wouldn't have known how to do alone. And there they were, 4 packages, 4 signatures, all marked delivered on April 9th. The signature on 3 of them was Blair's looping, confident handwriting. I stared at that signature until my eyes blurred. She hadn't forgotten, she hadn't misplaced them. She intercepted them. She made sure nobody saw my wedding. Caleb touched my shoulder gently. "What do you want to do?" I didn't have an answer right away. Anger would have been simpler. Rage would have made sense. But what I felt was something older, deeper, a wound that had been bleeding quietly for years. What do you do when the people who are supposed to love you choose not to see you? New Year's Eve was 2 weeks away. I almost didn't go. Almost let them continue pretending I didn't exist. But pretending was what created this mess in the first place. So I made a different choice. I went, and I brought the truth with me. New Year's Eve at my parents' house always looked perfect from the outside. White tablecloth, polished silver, champagne flutes catching the light from the chandelier Mom bought specifically for hosting. But the moment I walked through the door, I felt it settling over me like a familiar, suffocating blanket. Blair was already posing for photos near the fireplace, her fiancé Brent adjusting her hair while she laughed for the camera. Mom narrated every detail of Blair's upcoming March wedding to anyone within earshot, her voice bright and performative. Dad poured champagne mechanically, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Not one person asked how I'd been. Not one mentioned the wedding they'd all missed. I took my seat at the table, directly across from Blair. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Silence can be a weapon when you know how to wield it, and she'd always been good at that. Dinner started with the usual script: praise for Blair's engagement ring, her venue choice, her color scheme, her guest list that had already hit 280 people. Every sentence was a reminder that they'd shown up for her, over and over, without question, while they couldn't bother to acknowledge my wedding at all. Then Mom tapped her champagne glass. "Blair's engagement party was absolutely stunning," she said, her eyes sweeping the table before landing on Blair with that adoring look I'd seen my entire life. "So, Jordan, when are you finally going to settle down?" The table chuckled. Even the knife in Dad's hand paused midair like it didn't know which side to take. Blair kept her eyes on her plate, too still, too careful. That told me everything. For years, I would have laughed it off, let the insult slide under my skin, pretended it didn't hurt, but not this time, not after everything they'd buried. I set my fork down carefully, the sound sharp in the sudden quiet. "I already did," I said, my voice steady, 8 months ago. The shift in the room was immediate. Forks froze midair, eyes went wide. Mom's smile collapsed like a bad soufflé. Dad blinked rapidly, like he was trying to reboot his understanding of reality. Across from me, Blair's face didn't move. That was the tell. She knew exactly what was coming, and she couldn't stop it. I waited 1 beat, 2 beats, let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then I added, "You all got invitations." More silence, the kind where you could hear the heating system kick on in the basement. "Jordan," Dad said carefully, his lawyer voice activating, "we never received any invitations." There it was, the lie they'd rehearsed without even knowing they were rehearsing it. Something inside me settled. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. "I figured you'd say that," I replied softly. I reached into my purse, not rushing, not dramatic, and pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the dim dining room, reflecting in the champagne glasses like a spotlight. Every pair of eyes locked onto it. This was the line I'd never crossed before, the boundary I'd never drawn, the moment I stopped allowing myself to be rewritten. I tapped the screen, opening the tracking receipts, and the truth rose in my chest like a wave finally allowed to break. The moment my thumb opened the screenshots, the air in the room changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't chaotic, it was the kind of quiet that comes right before something collapses. The receipts opened in a neat grid, 4 deliveries, 4 signatures, all marked received. I zoomed in on the first one and rotated my phone so everyone at the table could see. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Blair's handwriting, that confident loop on the B, the dramatic flourish on the R. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth like she'd seen something obscene. Dad leaned forward, squinting like he needed to verify what he was seeing or it wouldn't be real. Brent went rigid in his chair, his eyes darting between the screen and his fiancée like someone had started speaking a language he didn't know she understood. Blair didn't move. Her face didn't even twitch. My pulse hammered in my fingertips, but my voice came out calm, too calm. "These were delivered April 9th, I said. All 4 invitations, signed for by Blair. The silence this time wasn't shock, it was exposure. "Jordan," Dad said, his voice dropping to a whisper, This must be a mistake." "It's not," I said, swiping to the next screenshot. "This is the tracking log from USPS. Priority mail, signature required, all confirmed, all delivered." I paused, then added quietly, "and all intercepted." Mom shook her head rapidly. No, that doesn't make sense. Blair would never—" "Stop," I said. Not harsh, just done. "You keep saying what Blair would never do, but you never look at what she actually does." That landed like a slap. Mom froze, her mouth half open. Brent finally spoke, his voice low and tight. "Blair, did you sign for these?" Blair blinked, not slow, not thoughtful, but mechanical, like she was trying to reboot. I don't remember," she said. "Maybe I grabbed the mail sometimes, but I didn't see any invitations." I stayed quiet. I'd learned a long time ago that silence could be louder than any accusation, so I let it sit there, heavy and suffocating. Dad stared hard at Blair now, his face pale. "You didn't see 4 packages from your sister around the time you knew she was engaged?" "It's not my job to track everyone's mail," Blair snapped, the first crack in her composure sharp enough to draw blood. It was the wrong move. Mom reached toward her. "Sweetheart." "No," I said, my voice still calm. "Let her talk. She's been talking for years. Let's hear what she has to say now." Blair glared at me, her jaw tight. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I swiped to the last screenshot, the one Caleb helped me pull from the email activity logs. "This," I said quietly, "is the activity log for the family email account. The wedding announcement I sent on April 11th was opened from this house, then permanently deleted within 2 minutes." Dad's jaw clenched. Who has access to that account? Everyone at the table knew the answer. Everyone had always known. Blair finally broke. "I didn't delete anything," she said, too fast, too defensive. I tilted my head slightly. "Then why does the log show your device ID?" Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Maybe I clicked it by accident. I don't know. Why are you attacking me like this? I'm not attacking you. I'm showing you what you did. Mom exhaled harshly, her voice rising. Why would Blair hide your invitations? Why would she sabotage your wedding? That's ridiculous. There it was, the defense she'd been polishing my entire life, the shield she raised every time Blair left a bruise. Why? I repeated, turning to look directly at Blair. Because my wedding was in June, yours is in March. Blair flinched like I'd thrown something at her. Because, I continued, voice steady, you didn't want anyone talking about mine before yours. That's insane, Blair hissed. You always twist things to make me the villain. No, I said, you did that yourself. Brent's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. Blair, is this true? She stared down at her napkin, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. This is... She looked up suddenly, her eyes wild. Everyone always acts like Jordan is so perfect, so low maintenance, like she doesn't need anything, like she doesn't want anything. She just exists and makes everyone feel... Feel what? I asked softly. She shot to her feet, her voice cracking. Guilty! She makes everyone feel guilty just by being there, by not needing attention, by not asking for anything. It's like she's silently judging us all the time. And there it was. Not a confession about the invitations, a confession about every year before them. I leaned back slightly in my chair. So, you hid my wedding, I said slowly, because it was quiet, because it didn't compete with your 280-person guest list and your custom cake and your venue that costs more than most people's cars. Blair's face crumpled, but she didn't deny it. Jordan, Dad said desperately, reaching across the table, we didn't know. If we'd known... You would have come? I finished for him. After missing every other milestone? After forgetting my birthday 3 years in a row? After making sure Blair's needs always came first? He closed his eyes. Mom's voice shook. You can't put all of this on us. We did our best. No, I said. You did your best for Blair. For me, you did the bare minimum and called it fairness. Blair sat down abruptly, her shoulders collapsing inward. Even she couldn't defend that. The weight of decades pressed into my chest. Not as grief anymore, as clarity. I looked at each of them, the people I had begged silently for years to see me, and I finally told the truth. I didn't lose my family tonight, I said, the words coming out clear and final. I just stopped pretending I had one. Mom gasped like I'd physically struck her. Jordan, don't you dare. Why not? I asked. Because it threatens the story you built? The one where Blair is perfect, Dad stays neutral, you're the peacekeeper, and I'm the problem child who expects too much? No one ever said you were the problem, Dad whispered. You didn't need to say it. You showed it, over and over, for 29 years. Brent sank back into his chair, staring at Blair like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. Like the woman sitting next to him had just revealed herself to be someone entirely different. Blair's voice came out small, broken. Jordan, please. That single word, please, it carried years of fear, control slipping through her fingers like sand, the sudden realization that her carefully constructed world was collapsing. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, the sound cutting through the thick silence. I'm done begging for a place at this table. I'm done asking you to show up for me. I'm done pretending Blair's choices hurt. I'm done accepting your silence as anything but agreement. I took a breath, feeling lighter with each word. I'm done. Dad stood too, his hand reaching across the table. Jordan, don't leave. We can talk about this. We are talking. For the first time, and the last time. Under these terms, anyway. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We can fix this. You can't fix what you refuse to see.
And you've refused to see me for years." I picked up my coat from the back of my chair, pulled it over my shoulders. The fabric felt heavy but grounding. As I walked toward the door, I heard Blair sob quietly behind me. I heard Mom mutter my name like a prayer she didn't know how to finish. I heard Dad say, "We should have checked. We should have asked."
But their regret wasn't my responsibility anymore. I opened the door, cold December air rushing in, and paused just long enough to say one last thing. "You didn't miss my wedding," I said, looking back at them one final time. "You chose not to see it." Then I stepped outside, letting the door close behind me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. A clean line drawn. And for the first time in my life, the silence that followed belonged to me. Caleb was waiting in the car at the end of the driveway, engine running, heat on. He took one look at my face and didn't ask what happened. He just reached over and squeezed my hand while I buckled my seatbelt. "You okay?" he asked after a moment. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "I actually am." We drove back to Portland in comfortable quiet, the city lights blurring past the windows, the radio playing soft jazz that filled the space without demanding anything. The next morning, January 1st, Caleb's parents invited us over for brunch. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and the kind of easy conversation that didn't require performance. Diane hugged me when we walked in, held on for several seconds, then pulled back and looked at me directly. "You look lighter," she said. I smiled. "I feel lighter." Greg asked about work, about the new housing development proposal I'd been analyzing. He remembered the details from 3 weeks ago when I'd mentioned it in passing. He asked if the city council approved the zoning change yet. That's when it hit me. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Presence, attention, memory, care. Not performance, not competition, just being seen. 3 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, Blair sent an email, a long one, 2,847 words to be exact. I didn't count them myself. Caleb did when I showed him. The email was apologetic, therapy speak dripping from every sentence. She admitted hiding the invitations. She admitted deleting the email. She explained she felt threatened by my happiness, jealous of my effortless life, scared that people would compare her wedding to mine and find hers lacking. She said she was working on herself. She said she understood now how much she'd hurt me. She said she hoped one day I could forgive her. I read it twice. Then I closed it. I didn't reply. Caleb asked if I wanted to, and I said no. Some apologies aren't meant to be accepted. Some apologies are just the apologizer trying to feel better about what they did. Blair didn't deserve my forgiveness. She deserved to sit with what she'd done. Dad called 4 days after that, on a Monday evening. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, his voice careful, tentative. "Hi, Dad." A pause, the sound of him breathing on the other end, gathering courage. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I should have protected you. I should have noticed. I should have asked questions." I didn't say anything. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I see it now. I see what we did, what I allowed." "Okay," I said. Another pause. Can I call you sometimes, just to check in?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "You can call." He did call, once a week, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Small conversations, careful conversations. He asked about work, he asked about Caleb. He didn't mention Blair or Mom unless I brought them up first, which I didn't. On the third Thursday, February 6th, his voice sounded different, heavier. "I've found something," he said. "In the garage. I was moving boxes for your mother, and I found one of your invitations." My breath caught. "It was buried under some old holiday decorations," he continued. Still in the envelope, still sealed. It never even made it into the house. I closed my eyes. "I'm mailing it to you," he said quietly. "I don't know if you want it, but I thought you should have it, as proof of everything you already knew." The invitation arrived 4 days later. Cream cardstock, sage green lettering, slightly bent at one corner from being shoved under Christmas lights and old ornaments. I held it for a long time, sitting on my couch, the afternoon light slanting through the windows. It wasn't closure, but it was acknowledgement. Mom never reached out, not once. Not an email, not a text, not a call. And for the first time in my life, that absence didn't feel like a wound. It felt like an answer. Blair's wedding happened on March 22nd. I knew because the date was on the save the date card she'd sent months before everything fell apart, still stuck to my fridge under a magnet shaped like Oregon. I didn't go, obviously, but I heard about it, through Dad, through mutual friends, through the grapevine that always finds a way. The wedding was chaos. Brent's family, who'd apparently heard the full story about the intercepted invitations through Brent himself, arrived cold and distant. His mother refused to be in any family photos with Blair. His father gave a toast that was so brief and impersonal it might as well have been a weather report. Halfway through the reception, Brent's younger sister Kendall, who'd had 4 glasses of champagne, stood up during the bouquet toss and said loudly, "I hope you're better at catching flowers than you are at delivering mail." The room went silent. Blair ran to the bathroom crying. The DJ tried to restart the music, but the damage was done. The story spread through the reception like wildfire. Guests whispered, people pulled out their phones. Someone posted about it on social media with the hashtag #InvitationGate. By the time dessert was served, half the guests had left early. Mom tried to salvage it, moving from table to table with forced smiles and explanations that nobody believed. Dad sat at the head table looking exhausted, defeated, older than I'd ever seen him. And Blair, according to Dad's careful recounting during our Thursday call, spent most of her wedding night arguing with Brent in their hotel room about whether his family had humiliated her on purpose. The marriage lasted 6 months. Brent filed for separation in September, citing fundamental trust issues in the paperwork. The divorce was finalized by December. I didn't take pleasure in it, but I didn't feel bad about it either. Some people build their lives on foundations of lies and performance and control, and when those foundations crack, everything collapses. Blair moved back in with Mom and Dad in November. I heard through Dad that she was struggling, that she'd quit her marketing job, that she spent most days in her old childhood bedroom scrolling through wedding photos and deleting comments from people who'd found out about the invitation scandal. Mom, according to Dad, blamed everything on me, said I ruined Blair's wedding by airing family business, said I was cruel for not forgiving Blair immediately, said I broke this family.
Dad didn't argue with her, but he didn't agree either. "I'm learning to set boundaries," he told me on a Thursday in late November, almost a full year after New Year's Eve. "It's hard, but I'm learning." I told him I was proud of him, and I meant it. Caleb and I hosted our own New Year's Eve that year. Nothing fancy, just us, Greg and Diane, a few close friends, homemade food, and champagne that cost $12 a bottle. At midnight, when everyone was hugging and cheering, Diane pulled me aside. "You know what I love about you?" she said, her eyes bright with champagne and affection. "What?" "You know your worth," she said, "and you don't apologize for it." I smiled, felt something warm settle in my chest. "I learned the hard way," I said. "The best lessons usually are," she replied. Later that night, after everyone left, Caleb and I stood on our small balcony overlooking the river. The city sparkled below us, distant fireworks still popping in neighborhoods across Portland. "Do you regret it?" he asked, quietly, confronting them, walking away. I thought about it, about the life I'd built, about the people who chose me every single day, about the silence that used to suffocate me and now felt like peace. "No, I don't regret it at all." He kissed my temple,
wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "Good," he said, "because I'm really proud of you." I leaned into him, watched the lights shimmer on the water, and realized something important. I used to believe family was something you protected no matter what it cost you, that blood was thicker than everything else, that loyalty meant accepting crumbs and calling it love. But standing there, in my own home with someone who actually saw me, I finally understood the truth. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shows up, it's who listens, it's who stays, it's who chooses you even when it's inconvenient, even when it's hard, even when there's nothing in it for them. And sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do is walk away from the people who never learned how to hold you. I don't talk to Mom anymore. I probably never will. Blair sends an email every few months, each one more desperate than the last, but I delete them without reading past the subject line. Dad and I still talk on Thursdays. Small steps, careful steps. It's not perfect, but it's honest, and that's more than I ever had before. If any part of this story felt familiar, if you've ever been the invisible child or the convenient scapegoat, tell me where you're watching from and share your story in the comments below. You're not alone. And don't forget to subscribe for the next one.